The university library closed at midnight during finals week, but someone was always still inside. Not a student cramming for exams, not a professor finishing research, someone else. Someone who never left footprints in the dust. The job seemed perfect when I took it. Night custodian at Aldridge University Library. Quiet work, decent pay, and I'd be done by 2 a.m. The head librarian, Mrs. Chen, walked me through on my first evening, her keys jangling against her hip. "Most nights you'll be completely alone," she said, leading me past rows of dark shelves. "Just vacuum the reading rooms, empty the bins, lock up when you're finished." She paused at the top of the main staircase. "The 4th floor is archives," she added. "Restricted access. Don't go up there unless you absolutely have to." I nodded. Easy enough. She handed me a key ring and left through the front entrance. The lock clicked behind her. And I was alone. For the first hour, everything was routine. I worked through the main floor, pushing my cart between study carrels and reading tables. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside the tall windows, campus was dark except for scattered streetlights. Then I heard the elevator. I stopped mid-sweep, listening. The old cage elevator rattled to life somewhere in the building's center. Floors ticked past on the brass indicator above the doors. 3, 4. It stopped. My stomach tightened. Mrs. Chen said the 4th floor was restricted. No one had access except her and the university archivist, and the archivist didn't work nights. I stood there, broom in hand, staring at the elevator doors. Maybe it was automatic. Old buildings did strange things. Pressure changes, faulty wiring. I went back to sweeping. 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps. Not loud, not fast. Just the soft, measured sound of someone walking across a wooden floor, directly above me. I looked up at the ceiling. The footsteps moved from one end of the building to the other. Then they stopped. I grabbed my radio, the one Mrs. Chen gave me for emergencies, and pressed the button. "Mrs. Chen, you there?" Static. I tried again. "This is night staff. Is anyone still in the building?" Nothing. I set the radio down and checked my phone. No service. The library's thick stone walls killed the signal on good days. I told myself to stay calm. Maybe a student had hidden in the stacks before closing. It happened sometimes. I'd find them, walk them out, no big deal. I took the stairs. The 2nd floor was empty, reading lamps dark, chairs pushed in. I moved to the 3rd floor, same thing. Shelves neat, study rooms vacant. That left the 4th floor. The stairwell ended at a heavy wooden door with a small brass plaque. Archives, authorized personnel only. I tried the handle. Locked. Relief washed over me. If it was locked, no one could be up there. Whatever I'd heard must have been pipes or settling beams. I turned to go back downstairs. That's when I heard it again. Footsteps, right on the other side of the door. Slow. Deliberate. Moving closer. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, softly, 3 knocks. From inside. I didn't wait. I ran down the stairs, my shoes echoing in the empty stairwell. I didn't stop until I reached the main floor. I grabbed the landline at the circulation desk and dialed Mrs. Chen's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Mrs. Chen, it's your night custodian. Someone's in the building, 4th floor. I heard footsteps and knocking. I don't know how they got in, but I'm calling campus security." I hung up and dialed security. A bored voice answered, "Campus security." "This is the night custodian at Aldridge Library. I think someone broke in. They're on the 4th floor." A pause. "You sure?" "Yes, I heard them." "All right, stay put. We'll send someone over." I hung up and waited. The library felt different now. The shadows between the shelves seemed deeper, the silence heavier. I kept my eyes on the main staircase. 15 minutes passed. Then I saw movement. At the top of the stairs, barely visible in the dim light, a figure stood watching me. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like an old coat. I couldn't see their face. "Hey," I called out, my voice shaking. "The library's closed. You need to leave." The figure didn't move. My hand found the radio. "Security, where are you? There's someone here." Static. I looked back at the stairs. The figure was gone. My breath came faster. I scanned the upper floor, searching for any sign of movement. Nothing. Then the elevator rattled to life again. The brass needle moved. 4, 3, 2. It was coming down. I backed toward the front entrance, fumbling for my keys. The elevator reached the main floor. The doors slid open, empty, but the air that spilled out was cold, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones. And faintly, from somewhere deep in the stacks, I heard it. A whisper. Not words, just a soft rasping sound, like someone trying to speak through dry lips. Campus security arrived 10 minutes later. 2 officers with flashlights swept every floor, including the archives. They found nothing. No broken locks, no signs of entry, no one hiding in the stacks. "Old building," one officer said. "Probably just pipes and wind." I didn't argue, but when Mrs. Chen came in the next morning, she pulled me aside. "I got your message," she said quietly, "about the 4th floor." I nodded. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "The 4th floor's been closed for 3 years, after the accident." "Accident?" She hesitated. "A graduate student. He was researching late one night, alone. We found him at the bottom of the stairwell the next morning." My mouth went dry. "What happened?" "No one knows. The door to the archives was locked from the inside. No sign of struggle. The coroner said his heart just stopped." She looked toward the staircase, but his research was still up there, spread across the reading table, like he just stepped away for a moment. "I quit 2 days later, but sometimes, late at night when I'm alone, I still think about that figure at the top of the stairs. The way it stood so still, the way it watched. And I wonder if it's still there, waiting by the archives door, listening for footsteps that aren't its own." They told me the grocery store was empty after 1 a.m. Just me, the shelves, and 8 hours to restock before the morning shift arrived. But on my 3rd night, I found something in the back that wasn't on any inventory list. Something that had been waiting a long time to be found. Have you ever worked somewhere with a room you weren't supposed to enter? Drop a comment and let me know what shift you're on right now. The job was simple. Overnight stock clerk at Martinez Foods, a big box grocery store on the edge of town. I'd come in at midnight, unlock the loading dock, and spend the next 8 hours refilling shelves from the stockroom. No customers, no managers breathing down my neck. Just me and a pallet jack. The store manager, Gil, gave me the tour on my first night. He was a heavy-set guy with tired eyes and keys that hung from a retractable cord on his belt. "Stockroom's through there," he said, pointing to double doors at the back of the store. "Everything's labeled. Canned goods, dry storage, refrigerated. You'll figure it out." We walked through the swinging doors into a massive concrete room. Metal shelving units stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with boxes and crates. Industrial lights buzzed overhead. "One more thing," Gil added, stopping near the far wall. "See that door?" I followed his gaze to a small door tucked in the corner. It was old, painted gray, with no window or label. "That's the old cold storage," he said. "Been out of commission for years. Don't waste your time trying to open it. Lock's rusted shut." I nodded. He handed me my key card and left through the front entrance, and I got to work. The first 2 nights went fine. I learned the rhythm. Scan the shelves, check the list, haul boxes from the stockroom. The store was quiet after midnight, just the hum of freezers and the occasional click of the automatic sprinklers outside. But on the third night, something changed. I was restocking the cereal aisle around 2 a.m. when I heard it. A thump, deep and hollow, like something heavy falling. It came from the stockroom. I set down the box I was holding and walked back through the double doors. The stockroom was exactly as I'd left it. Boxes stacked neatly, shelves in order, nothing out of place. I stood there, listening. Silence. Then another thump. This time I could pinpoint it. The old cold storage door. I stared at it from across the room. The gray paint was chipped and faded. The handle was dark with rust. Something inside had moved. I told myself it was nothing. Old buildings settled. Pipes expanded and contracted. Reasonable explanations. But my feet carried me closer anyway. I stopped a few feet from the door and listened. Nothing. Then faintly I heard it. Breathing. Slow and raspy, like someone struggling for air. My hand hovered near the handle. "Hello?" I called out. The breathing stopped. I waited, heart pounding. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice whispered, "Help me." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a crate. The voice was thin and desperate. A woman's voice. "Please," it said again. "I'm so cold." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. No signal. The stockroom walls were thick concrete. I ran to the front of the store and grabbed the landline at customer service. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at Martinez Foods on Route 9. Someone's trapped in the back room. I can hear them. Is the person injured? I don't know. They're behind a locked door in the old cold storage. A pause. Sir, are you alone in the building? Yes, I'm the overnight stalker. Stay on the line. We're sending officers now. I stayed by the phone, watching the stockroom doors. 10 minutes felt like an hour. When the police arrived, I led them straight to the door. 2 officers, both carrying flashlights. This is it, I said, pointing. One officer tried the handle. Locked, like Gil said. You heard someone inside? He asked. Yes, a woman. She said she was cold. The officers exchanged a look. We'll need bolt cutters, the first officer said into his radio. While we waited, I told them everything. The thumping, the breathing, the voice. The second officer walked the perimeter of the stockroom, shining his light along the walls. How long has this door been sealed? He asked. Manager said years. It's old cold storage. The officer nodded slowly. And you're sure you heard someone? Positive. A third officer arrived with bolt cutters. He snapped the rusted lock in 2 quick motions. The door swung open. Cold air spilled out, carrying the smell of mildew and something else. Something sour. The officers stepped inside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. I stayed in the doorway, watching. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet. Empty shelves lined the walls. The floor was concrete, cracked and stained, and in the center of the room sat a single wooden chair, facing the door. Clear, one officer called out. They searched every corner. Nothing. No one. Are you sure this is where you heard the voice? The first officer asked. I stepped inside. The air was freezing, far colder than it should have been for a room that hadn't been used in years. Yes, I said quietly. Right here. One officer crouched near the chair, examining the floor. Look at this. We gathered around. Scratches, deep gouges in the concrete radiating out from the chair legs, like someone had been dragging it, or trying to move it. The officer stood up, his face grim. We'll file a report, but there's no one here now. They left 20 minutes later. I stood alone in the stockroom, staring at the open door. The chair sat in the center of the room, perfectly still. I should have left, should have walked out and never come back. But something made me step closer. On the back of the chair, carved into the wood, were words, faint and weathered, but still readable. She's still here. I stumbled backward and ran. I didn't stop until I was outside in the parking lot, gasping for air under the streetlights. I called Gil. It went to voicemail. I quit, I said. I'm not going back in there. I drove home and didn't sleep. The next morning, Gil called me back. What happened? He asked. I told him everything. The voice, the police, the chair, the message. There was a long silence. Listen, he said carefully. That room's been empty for 15 years. We sealed it after the incident. What incident? Another pause. A night stalker, back in 2009. She disappeared during her shift. Police searched everywhere, never found her. My blood ran cold. Where did she disappear? Stockroom, he said quietly, near the old cold storage. I hung up. I never went back. But sometimes late at night, I think about that chair, the way it faced the door, like it was waiting, and I wonder if she's still sitting there in the dark, whispering to anyone who gets close enough to hear. Downtown parking garages are supposed to be safe. Cameras on every level, emergency buttons every 50 feet, bright fluorescent lights that never go out. But the one on 5th and Market had a blind spot, level B3. And on my 4th night working there, I found out why no one else wanted the overnight shift. If you've ever felt watched in a parking garage, you're not alone. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? I took the job because it paid better than anything else I could find. Overnight parking attendant at the 5th Street garage. 12-hour shifts, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., sitting in a little booth near the entrance and exit gates. Simple work. Take tickets, process payments, keep an eye on the security monitors. The garage manager, a woman named Diane, showed me the booth on my first evening. It was cramped but clean. A chair, a small desk, a computer terminal, and a wall of security monitors showing every level. Most nights you won't see much action, she said. Monthly parkers come and go. Maybe a few late workers. It's pretty dead after midnight. She pointed to the monitors. If you see anything weird, hit this button. It alerts our security company. I nodded, scanning the screens. 6 levels. A, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5. What's on B3? I asked. She glanced at the monitor. Long-term storage, mostly abandoned cars waiting for tow. We don't get much traffic down there. Does the camera work? She looked closer. The B3 feed showed a dim concrete level with a few scattered vehicles, but the image was grainy, almost staticky. It's an older camera, she said. Been meaning to replace it. Why? No reason. She handed me the keys and a 2-way radio. Call if you need anything. Otherwise, see you at shift change. She left, and I settled in. The first few nights were exactly what Diane described. Quiet. A handful of cars coming and going. Long stretches of silence broken only by the hum of ventilation fans echoing through the concrete levels. But I couldn't stop watching the B3 monitor. Something about it felt off. The image quality was poor, sure, but it wasn't just that. The way the shadows fell, the way certain areas seemed darker than they should be, and sometimes, just for a second, I thought I saw movement. On my 4th night, around 1 a.m., a car pulled up to the exit gate. I pressed the intercom. "Ticket, please." The driver, a man in a business suit, fed his ticket into the machine. The gate lifted, and he drove out into the empty street. I logged the transaction and went back to the monitors. That's when I noticed it. On the B3 feed, a car I'd never seen before was parked near the far wall. I leaned closer to the screen. It was an old sedan. Faded paint, flat tires, covered in dust. It hadn't been there an hour ago. I rewound the footage, scanning backward through the last 60 minutes. Nothing. The car just appeared, like someone had placed it there while the camera wasn't looking. But the camera never stopped recording. I grabbed the radio. "Diane, you there?" Static. I tried again. "This is Overnight Booth. Anyone on this channel?" More static, then finally, a voice crackled through. "This is dispatch. Go ahead. I've got a vehicle on B3 that wasn't there before. No record of entry." A pause. Could be a glitch in the log. Want us to send someone? I looked at the monitor. The car sat in the grainy shadows, perfectly still. "No," I said. "I'll check it out." I grabbed a flashlight and walked to the stairwell. The garage smelled like oil and exhaust. My footsteps echoed as I descended, each level colder than the last. B1, empty. B2, a few parked cars, all accounted for. B3. I pushed through the heavy door and stepped onto the lowest level. The air was damp, colder than it should have been. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, casting uneven shadows across the concrete. I shined my flashlight toward the far wall. The sedan was there, exactly where it appeared on the monitor. I walked closer, my beam cutting through the darkness. The car was old, decades old. Rust ate through the wheel wells. The windows were fogged from the inside. I circled it slowly, looking for a license plate. Gone. Removed. I tried the driver's door. Locked. I leaned closer, wiping the condensation from the window, and froze. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. I stumbled backward, my flashlight shaking. The figure didn't move, just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. I raised the radio. "Dispatch, I need security down here now. B3, there's someone in a vehicle." Static. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Nothing. I backed toward the stairwell, keeping my light on the car. The figure still hadn't moved. Then, slowly, its head turned toward me. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the booth, slamming the door behind me. My hands shook as I pulled up the B3 monitor. The car was still there, but the figure was gone. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in short gasps. Then I saw it. On the monitor, standing near the stairwell door, was the figure, watching the camera, watching me. I hit the emergency button. Security arrived 15 minutes later. 2 guards with flashlights and radios swept B3 from top to bottom. They found the car, but no one inside. "Probably some squatter," one guard said. "They get in through the lower vents sometimes." They ran the VIN. The car had been reported abandoned 12 years ago, towed to the garage and forgotten. "Why wasn't it removed?" I asked. The guard shrugged. "Paperwork gets lost. Happens all the time." They left. I sat in the booth watching the monitors. The car was still there, but now I noticed something I'd missed before. On the rear window, someone had traced words in the condensation. 3 words, barely visible in the grainy feed. "I'm still here." I called Diane the next morning. "I can't do this," I said. "I'm sorry, I quit." She sighed. "You saw something on B3, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "We've had 6 attendants quit in the last 2 years," she said quietly. "All overnight, all the same story." "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have taken the job?" I hung up. But before I left the garage for the last time, I checked the B3 monitor one more time. The car was gone. In its place, standing exactly where it had been parked, was the figure, facing the camera, waiting. I don't know who they were. I don't know what they wanted. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that cold concrete level. And I wonder if they're still standing there in the dark, tracing messages on windows that no one will ever read. Night shifts at St. Catherine's Hospital were always quiet on the 5th floor. That's where they kept patients in long-term care. People who couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't call for help. But on my second week, I learned that quiet doesn't always mean empty. And sometimes the patients aren't the only ones waiting in those rooms. Have you ever worked in a hospital at night? Tell me in the comments what floor you were on and whether you ever heard something you couldn't explain. I started as an overnight orderly because the pay was good and the work seemed straightforward. Transport patients, deliver supplies, assist nurses when they needed an extra set of hands. St. Catherine's was an old hospital, built in the 1950s with long hallways and high ceilings that made every sound echo. The fifth floor was the quietest. Long-term care patients. Most of them were elderly, unresponsive, kept alive by machines and feeding tubes. The charge nurse, a woman named Rita, walked me through on my first night. "You'll spend most of your time up here," she said, leading me down a dim corridor. "Room checks every 2 hours. Make sure everyone's comfortable. Call me if anything changes." We stopped outside room 507. "This is Mr. Garrison," she said, pushing the door open. The room was dark except for the glow of monitors. An elderly man lay in the bed, eyes closed, breathing tube in his throat. The steady beep of his heart monitor was the only sound. "He's been here 4 years," Rita said quietly. "No family, no visitors, just us." She closed the door. "Most of the patients are like him," she added. "They can't respond, but we treat them with dignity. Talk to them. Let them know someone's there." I nodded. She handed me a key card. "5th floor access. Don't go to the 6th. It's closed for renovations." "What's on the 6th floor?" "Old psych ward. Been empty for 10 years, locked up tight." She left me with a supply cart and a checklist, and I started my rounds. The first week went smoothly. I learned the routine. Check vitals, adjust pillows, refill water pitchers that no one would drink from. The nurses were kind. The patients were silent. But on my second week, something changed. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard it. I was restocking supplies in the utility closet when a call button lit up at the nurses' station. Room 507, Mr. Garrison's room. I walked down the hallway and pushed open his door. The room was exactly as I'd left it. Mr. Garrison lay motionless in his bed. The monitors beeped steadily. Nothing had changed, but the call button was pressed. I looked at it, mounted on the bed rail, just inches from his hand that hadn't moved in 4 years. I reset the button and checked his vitals. Everything normal. I stepped back into the hallway and radioed Rita. Call button went off in 507. Patient stable. Might be a malfunction. "Copy that," she said. "I'll have maintenance check it tomorrow." I went back to my rounds. 20 minutes later, the call button lit up again. Room 507. I walked back, slower this time. The door was slightly open. I was sure I'd closed it. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. Mr. Garrison lay in the same position, eyes closed, breathing tube in place. But now his hand was resting on the call button, not pressing it, just resting there. My stomach tightened. I moved closer, studying his face. His eyes were still closed. His chest rose and fell with the ventilator's rhythm, but his fingers twitched, just once, barely visible. I backed toward the door and radioed Rita again. "I think you should come to 507. "What's wrong?" "Just come look." She arrived 2 minutes later, her footsteps quick in the empty hallway. I showed her Mr. Garrison's hand. "He moved," I said. She checked his chart, then his monitors. "His vitals are unchanged. Brain activity's the same. It could be a reflex." "A reflex that hits the call button?" She didn't answer. She adjusted his hand, moving it away from the button, and made a note in his chart. "I'll keep an eye on it," she said. "Finish your rounds." I left the room, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong. At 4 a.m., I was in the break room when the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the overhead PA system crackled to life. A voice, thin and distorted, whispered through the speakers. "Help me." I froze. The voice repeated, "Help me, please." I ran to the nurse's station. Rita was already there, staring at the intercom panel. "What floor is that coming from?" I asked. She checked the system. 6th floor. I thought the 6th floor was closed. It is. We looked at each other. "We need to check it," I said. She shook her head. "We don't have access. Only maintenance and security." "Then call security." She picked up the phone. No dial tone. The lights flickered again. And from somewhere above us, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, walking back and forth across the 6th floor. Rita grabbed the radio. "Security, this is 5th floor. We need someone up here now." Static. "Security, do you copy?" Nothing. The footsteps stopped. Then, from directly above us, something heavy dragged across the floor, metal scraping against tile. Rita's face went pale. "We need to leave. Now." We headed for the stairwell, but halfway down the hall, every call button lit up at once. Every room, every patient. The hallway filled with the sound of electronic chimes, overlapping and echoing. We ran to the stairs and descended to the 4th floor. Security met us there. 2 officers with flashlights. "What's going on?" one asked. Rita explained. The voice, the footsteps, the call buttons. They went up to investigate. We waited. 20 minutes later, they came back down. "5th floor's clear," the first officer said. "All patients stable. No signs of entry on the 6th floor. Doors still locked." "What about the intercom?" I asked. "System malfunction. Happens in old buildings. We'll have it checked." They left. Rita and I went back to the 5th floor. Everything was quiet. The call buttons were dark. The patients lay still in their beds.
We walked to room 507.
The door was open again. Inside, Mr. Garrison was exactly as we'd left him, except for one thing. On the whiteboard beside his bed, someone had written a message in shaky, uneven letters. 6th floor. She's waiting. Neither of us had written it. I quit the next day. Rita told me later that they reviewed the security footage. No one entered room 507 between our visits. No one accessed the 6th floor. The intercom malfunction was never explained. But the message stayed on the whiteboard for 3 days before someone finally erased it. Mr. Garrison died a week later, heart failure. The nurses said it was peaceful. But I still think about that night, the footsteps above us, the voice on the intercom, and that message on the whiteboard. 6th floor. She's waiting. I don't know who she is. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if she's still up there, waiting for someone to open the door. The Starlight Motel sat at the edge of the highway, the kind of place truckers used for a few hours of sleep before pushing on. I took the night desk job because no one else wanted it. The pay was cash, the work was easy, and the guests never stayed long. But on my 5th night, someone checked in who had been gone for a very long time. If you've ever stayed in a roadside motel that felt just a little off, drop a comment. Let me know where you're listening from tonight. The Starlight hadn't been updated since the 1980s. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, 20 rooms facing a cracked parking lot. The owner, a man named Vernon, handed me the keys on my first shift. "You'll be alone from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., he said. "Check people in, check people out. Don't bother the guests unless they bother you." He showed me the front desk, a small counter, an old computer terminal, a board with room keys hanging on hooks. "Most nights you'll get maybe 3 or 4 people," he added. "Truckers mostly. They pay cash, sleep a few hours, leave before dawn." He pointed to a door behind the desk. "That's the office. Old records, supplies. Don't go digging around in there. Just focus on the desk." I nodded. He left, and I was alone. The first few nights were exactly what Vernon described. Quiet. A trucker would pull in around midnight, pay for a room, disappear until 5 a.m. By sunrise, the lot was empty again. But on the fifth night, something different happened. It was just past 2 a.m. when headlights swept across the front windows. A car pulled into the lot, not a semi, a sedan. Old, with primer spots on the hood and a cracked windshield. The engine cut off, and the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. She was maybe 30, wearing jeans and a faded jacket. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired, like she'd been driving for days. She walked to the front door and pushed it open. The bell above the door chimed. "Hi," she said quietly. "Do you have a room?" "Sure," I said, pulling up the system. "Just you?" She nodded. "How many nights?" "Just one." I typed in the details. "That'll be $50. Cash or card?" She reached into her jacket and pulled out a crumpled $50 bill. I took it and handed her a key. "Room 12, down on the end." She looked at the key, then back at me. "Is it still the same? The room?" I frowned. "Same as what?" "Never mind," she said quickly. "Thank you." She turned and walked back outside. I watched through the window as she drove her car to the far end of the lot and parked in front of room 12. She sat there for a moment, staring at the door. Then she got out, unlocked the room, and went inside. The light clicked on. The curtains stayed closed. I went back to the desk. An hour passed. No calls, no movement. Around 3 a.m., I decided to check the guest log, just to pass the time. I pulled up the old paper records Vernon kept in the office. Handwritten entries going back decades. Names, dates, room numbers. I flipped through the years, not looking for anything in particular. Then I saw it. A name in the log from 15 years ago. Sarah Calloway. Room 12. I stared at the entry. The date was marked with a small asterisk. Below it, in Vernon's handwriting, was a note. Guest did not check out. Police notified. My stomach tightened. I grabbed the current guest registry and looked at the name I'd just entered. Sarah Calloway. Room 12. The same name, the same room. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. Maybe it was a coincidence. A relative, a daughter with the same name. But the woman outside hadn't looked young enough to be someone's daughter. She looked exactly the right age. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The parking lot was silent. The woman's car sat in front of room 12, its engine ticking as it cooled. I walked toward the room, my footsteps loud on the pavement. The light was still on inside, the curtains still closed. I knocked on the door. "Ma'am, everything okay?" No answer. I knocked again, louder. "This is the front desk, just checking in." Silence. I pulled out my master key and unlocked the door. The room was empty. The bed was made. The bathroom door was open. No luggage, no personal items. But the air was cold, far colder than it should have been with the heater running. I stepped inside, shining my flashlight around. On the nightstand, someone had left a note. I picked it up with shaking hands. In neat, careful handwriting, it read, "I never left." I backed out of the room and ran to the front desk. I dialed Vernon's number. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "What?" he said groggily. "A woman checked in tonight. Sarah Calloway, room 12. A long pause. "That's not possible. I checked her in myself. I took her money." "Listen to me," Vernon said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Sarah Calloway died 15 years ago, in room 12. My blood ran cold. What happened? Carbon monoxide leak, faulty heater. She checked in late, went to sleep, never woke up. We found her the next morning." I looked out the window at room 12. The light was off now. "She's not here anymore," I said quietly. "The room's empty. Good, Vernon said. Lock up, go home. We'll talk in the morning. He hung up. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, but before I left, I checked the cash drawer. The $50 bill the woman had given me was gone. In its place was a note, written in the same handwriting. Thank you for letting me come home. I locked the front desk and walked to my car. As I pulled out of the lot, I glanced back at room 12. The curtains were open now, and standing in the window, barely visible in the darkness, was the woman. She raised one hand in a small wave. Then the light clicked off, and she was gone. I quit the next morning. Vernon didn't argue. He said 3 other clerks had seen her over the years, always the same story, always room 12, always the same name. He never fixed the heater, said it didn't matter. The room stayed cold no matter what. The Starlight Motel closed 2 years later, sold to a developer who tore it down and built a gas station. But sometimes, late at night when I drive past that stretch of highway, I think about Sarah Calloway, about the way she stood in that window, the way she waved, and I wonder if she's still there, somewhere beneath the concrete and fluorescent lights, still waiting in room 12, still trying to check out.